Hello, and welcome to the Quantum Theater Podcast. This is Joshua Edjida, and I am excited for this episode because this is actually the first episode. It's August right now. This is the first episode since I've been on hiatus for a while, since December of 2022. I'm sorry, 2022. Yeah, this is 2023. And so this is the first episode where uh, I'm not alone, where the Toltec knowledge will be discussed, in addition to uh, other perspective on that. And I'm really looking forward to this because we'll be having a great conversation with my good friend Michael Monk. I can't remember what year we met, but it was some years ago. It was probably, I want to say, um, 2017, 2018, something like that. And we both gone through a lot of changes since we first met. Michael is a teacher of energy mastery and expansion of consciousness. And he has some really profound ways of working with energy and ways of working with consciousness. And you'll see what I mean. It's really phenomenal what he has developed pretty much all on his own, which is another thing that makes him quite remarkable. And I can also say from personal experience that he's also very heart-centered and loving and gentle and humble, and what really makes somebody trustworthy. And that's what really made me want to have him on the podcast here. So thank you so much for joining me in the conversation, Michael. I am looking forward to this.
Thank you, Josh. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So I have a few questions I prepared for you, and I'd like to introduce some topics because as of the last episode back in December, as I mentioned, um, the podcast became more overtly through the lens of the Toltec knowledge. And so, what is interesting about the Toltec knowledge is it's not necessarily intellectual knowledge, it's like the embodiment of knowledge of self. So, for example, like if you go into, let's say, an African country, and there's somebody who is naturally very gifted in energy work and awakening, they may have never heard of the Toltec knowledge, but they could still be practicing what we would call the Toltec knowledge because it refers to the original knowledge. It refers to the original knowledge of self. And so even if somebody discovers it on their own, we that's if in the Toltec world, that's what we call it, is that is the Toltec knowledge. So when I see you, Michael, I see you as someone who has discovered and mastered a lot of the Toltec knowledge without having been um, trained in it by anyone other than yourself. And however, I don't want to put words in your mouth. However, you see that maybe training through God. And so I find it really, really interesting and exciting to kind of hash some of this out so that we can, I've just seen it as an opportunity to play with terminologies and possibilities. And this is like a canvas of work. And Toltec actually means artist. So yeah, I'm really excited. Does that all sound cool for you?
Yeah, I love that. Like you said, I've met a few people on the way and learned some things from other people, but I haven't studied any books or any systems of knowledge. When I first woke up to higher consciousness and God began communicating with me, I received very clear instruction to trust what I receive internally and to develop my own meditations, my own understanding, and my own terminology. And so far, after everything that I've developed, three cultures from mankind, from our past, have surfaced where people are like, "Wow, oh my God, Michael, everything you say is so in alignment, and
Mm-hmm.
that's incredible." And one of them is the Essenes, the
Yeah.
Essene culture,
Yeah.
and they do a lot with the Heart of Christ, with the Tree of
Yeah.
Life. Like the terminology I use is almost the same, and that's very
Nice.
interesting.
Yeah.
Chi
Yeah.
Gong for the energy stuff, and then
Hmm.
Toltec. So
Hmm.
yeah, I find that very, very validating that several respectable ancient cultures have alignment or share alignment with what I came up with mostly internally.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And I'll just chime in something about that. I created this story awakening process called, or kind of energy completion process called the quantum theater, which is what this podcast is named after. And I developed this on my own. Um, and then I learned later that it's actually there is a Toltec practice called theater of infinity. And so what I realized was I was discovering something that already existed in the past. And so maybe I was trained in it in a past life. So I wouldn't be surprised. We're also receiving a lot of these trainings in a past life for them in this life. So I don't know how you feel
Yeah,
about all that.
definitely. And then there's the fifth dimensional consideration that all of time is simultaneous, that the past is happening at
Yeah,
the
yeah,
same time as the now. So there's like
yeah,
an overlap here, a divinity, and it's always so
yeah,
heartwarming and validating when you come up with something internally to find it in the so-called past. I love it.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I love it. And it's kind of like entertaining to me when with the linear aspect of it. But yeah, I absolutely agree with it's all right now. Um, so I'm gonna start with my first question. Um, so first question is, I know you've changed a lot from the time that I met you until now. Uh, I understand it as you used to work more with cities that you developed intentionally. And now it seems, from what I understand, is that you let God guide your decisions more. And if you could just talk more about this really significant change that you've gone through personally since I've known you.
Sure. So back when I first started teaching, this would be 2011 through the Avatar Energy Mastery Institute. I was either the first or one of the first channels that started uploading demonstrations of telekinesis and aerokinesis, moving the wind and all of this. And
Hmm.
my first awakening to consciousness was communication from God and experiencing miracles by prayer. But then through following the promptings of what I call the Holy Spirit, I was naturally led to energy mastery. The world of energy just spontaneously opened up to me, and I was exposed to it. And then I was exposed to certain materials about creating reality, that we create reality, and that God is actually within, and that there's nothing external to you. And so I got really wrapped up in my own self-empowerment for a while. And so for a few years there, I totally forgot about my relationship with God and instead was embodying God, like viewing God as
Hmm.
only being within me, and that the idea of God being something external to you, a complete illusion. And I followed that path to the end. Like I got to make some extremely high levels of consciousness and manifested some very profound abilities. And there's something that happens once you hit a certain mark uh, in that level of self-centered self-empowerment, and that is that you get noticed, you get exposed, and you get noticed by other individuals who they themselves believe them to be God. And so obviously your belief that you are God is quite conflicting to their beliefs. So unbeknownst to me at the time, when you choose to embody God as being the self, you start to swim with the sharks because like attracts
Mm,
like. So you swim
yeah.
in the same waters as other consciousness who are embodying that same belief. And obviously it's like the Highlander. There can be only one. Like that, that's what it's like there. So a very
Uh-huh.
extreme and very violent spiritual warfare erupted in my
Mm,
life for a period of 3 months. Basically, for 3 months
wow.
straight, every single night of my life became a fight for my body, mind, and soul. Like consciousness would sometimes, by itself, sometimes gangs of them would come into my dwelling, come into my space, and wage spiritual warfare with me.
Mm.
And I know most people hear that term spiritual warfare and it maybe feels a little bit safe and cozy as compared to like physical warfare, but it's not when it's
Mm.
real, not at this level, because they're using the highest levels of energy mastery to fight you for possession of yourself. So like
Mhm.
what spiritual warfare is at the highest level is all of these entities are aware of the law of one, that everything is connected, that the self is a part of everything, that everything is self, but they have a self-centered or a warped view of that where they view, well, it's just all me. It's just all me. Everybody's just another version of me. The universe exists to serve me. It's all my plaything. So I need to exert my dominance and prove to every other being that I encounter that I am them. So much so that I
Mm.
can become them and take them over from
Mm.
the inside out and let them know that they're just a pawn of my being. So that's what was attempted to do to me. Through the law of one, they were attempting to possess my spirit and my body to a point where
Mm.
I would have been ejected from my body. And so
Mhm.
they would use the nervous system of the body through energetic connections to try to stop my breathing, to prevent me from being able to breathe. They would try to trigger heart attacks and strokes in the mind.
Mm.
And basically,
Mm.
it was like they were going to show me that they had complete control from the inside out. So,
Mm.
long
Yeah.
story short, there, I was like a fish in water with spiritual warfare. I was very
Mm.
good at it, frighteningly so, like
Mm.
frighteningly so. And I
Mm.
think it was a part of my destiny. I really
Mm.
do. I don't think it was all just a mistake, that I accidentally
Yeah.
swam in
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
wrong waters, but I proved very much capable of holding my own space no matter what was sent against me, probably in part to my unique training as an energy master, that I was very grounded, very, very centered in myself. During my energetic training, I was all about grounding. I was all about being focused deep in the self, deep in the heart. So I had developed a lot of love, but not love in the human conceptual mental term. Love as in the force of love, gravity,
Yeah.
strength,
Mhm.
and power.
Mhm.
So anything that would try and become me, I would just say, well, welcome home. And I would just pull it in and just breathe it and hold it. And then I would subject it to mental and physical and vibrational torture that it couldn't handle it. And after about 3 months, none of these negative spirits wanted to even be close to me. So after
Mm.
3 months of this, I finally had
It's
peace.
like
I mean, like,
tell your friends what you went through.
yeah, finally, after
Wow.
3 long months of like psychosis, I mean, imagine what happened to my external reality if this is what I'm going through all
Yeah.
day, every day. I lashed out at
Yeah.
everybody that I knew and
Yeah.
loved because these beings were capable of impersonation. They would make it seem like the people that loved me the most in my life are actually my enemies and wanted me
Mhm.
dead, wanted to take me over, possess me, control me, or
Mm.
wanted me
Mhm.
completely dead. So by my actions in this type of psychosis, I destroyed every beautiful, good, loving relationship in my life. And I was
Mm.
fighting, for my body, my mind, and my soul. Because
Yeah.
if they could
Yeah.
successfully take over my body, which is my grounding point, my anchor point into this life, and people don't realize that, but the body is protection. The body has a matrix, a nervous system of reality that allows our spirit to interpret all of this. When we're not in the body, we can free flow through any realm, through any interpretation. So there's that high level of freedom, but there's also that high level of risk. You can get stuck in some
Risk.
really
Mhm.
bad places, and then you don't have a
Mhm.
body to return to. So if they would have successfully been able to eject me from my body, then my spirit would have been magnetically placed in their realms that they had control over. So I would have lost my anchor point and became their little torture play puppet for expanses of time that go beyond human understanding because it's not linear time.
Yeah.
Like it would have
Yeah.
basically been eternities of torture. So
Yeah.
anyhow, it's very
Yeah.
rough mentally to experience and cause a level of psychosis for sure. And then, but yeah, after 3 months, I finally experienced peace, as nothing wanted to even be close to me, because at that point, if a spirit would get anywhere close to me, I would just grab it, suck it in, and I was very, very violent. I was not a very loving being at that time. But finally, I
Mm,
had peace. And in that peace, I started to experience healing. But then something very special happened, and that was that God descended into my being once again in that peace and started communicating with me and showed
mm,
me that even though all is indeed one, and that God is a part of myself and I can embody that, but God is also separate from the self as well, that God exists inside the self, but also outside the self. Because
mm,
the
mhm.
part of our self that we call God is so vastly different, so well, like we're in a finite experience of reality. God is centered in an infinite system of reality, so that there's no
Mhm.
comparison there. So we as finite beings cannot even fully embody a shred of the fullness of what God really is. So even
Yeah.
though we can experience ourselves through consciousness expansion, that we are the infinite, that we are the one, it still pays to, and this is what I call a part of alignment, to keep a healthy amount of separation between the self and God. But it showed me that even though you have expanded into the infinite, that I'm still beyond you and I'm able to communicate with you. And not only
Mhm.
that, but I love you, and that you're safe, you're protected. It's okay to let me in. And that's when God started talking to me about the tree of life, which is a new matrix, a new system of interpreting reality. Like right now,
Yeah.
we interpret reality through the nervous system of the human body. And I believe with all my heart that the Garden of Eden story is an allegory or an allegory uh, for the nervous system of the human body being the tree of knowledge, that we incarnated into this tree. By being in the nervous system, we experience ourselves as separated from the world. We experience sight, sound, taste, touch, smell, and we accumulate knowledge that
Yeah.
relates to that. Well, the tree of life is a set of spiritual circuitry pathways
Mhm.
for our spirit to embody that God holds in us
Mhm.
and through us. And so that changed everything. That was the big game changer. And I was shown that the new way of being within the tree of life is to focus on loving God, to devote your human self, your ego, which is so easily corruptible through desire, through the desires of the ego, through the need to assert the self, to find out where the self fits in with society, to find love, to accumulate abundance. All of these desires that we have are pathways to corruption, and negative consciousness can easily grab hold of even our righteous desires and twist. They say that good and
Mhm.
the positive intentions can be the pathway to hell. That's what that is. So I was shown
Mm,
that
mhm.
by devoting my human consciousness to loving God, that keeps the presence of God the highest, the infinite, the ultimate higher self
Mhm.
in our
Mhm.
energy field, and allows us to be guided by God, to where in the process of me devoting myself to loving God, I am automatically guided to all sorts of other wonderful, fulfilling things that allow me to finally, for the first time, fulfill my destiny unimpeded. And so that's why
Mhm.
I'm wholeheartedly devoted to this new path, which is a devotion to loving God in the moment, being the wisest thing
Mm,
that you can do, because that allows the will of God to fill your now space. And love
mhm.
itself is a force that amplifies and harmonizes light. So the more you choose
Mhm.
to love God in the moment, the more your true and ultimate higher self gains a control over your immediate environment and over the time stream, the world that you live in. So basically,
Mhm.
your life gets blessed in ways that you can never achieve by yourself, trying to do abundance manifestations and everything that right. So
Right.
that's
Right.
where I'm at, and yeah, that's the
Yeah.
short
Awesome.
story
Okay.
of it.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you. So it raised a question which I want to ask, and I'll say a couple of terminologies, just maybe if you want to use them or not, it doesn't matter. But
Sure.
one thing I'll say is that in the Toltec system, and when I say system, it's like system loosely. It's really just putting a bunch of terminologies on different moving parts that naturally exist. The Toltec isn't. There's no prescription for anything, right? So it's kind of like what you do is you're exploring and making discoveries, and then exploring more and making more discoveries, and you're the artist of your own path, right? And so this is like that. It's like every Toltec practitioner. There's no linear like do this and then do this. So it's kind of like
Okay.
differentiating different issues of spirituality, the invisible world. So the body and mind and basically everything physical is the tonal in Toltec, the tonal, and then
Okay.
everything that is of your spirit and your soul, your essence, is the nawal, Nagual, nawal.
No. Well, okay.
And that's especially referring to power itself, because the soul, the spirit, um, behind that is power. And power in the Toltec approach, power is um, basically unknowable, but we can find ways to become available to it.
Hmm.
And so the we call it stalking power. So we're stalking whatever inside of ourselves is not available to power, because humans innately don't themselves with power because of all the crazy stuff that happens in the world. And
Yeah.
so the stalking of power makes us become more and more available to power over time, and we become a Toltec. We become a person of knowledge. We become an artist. And
Right.
so in that becoming, this is where the question is kind of forming. In that becoming, um, one can say we are building the unified whole. One can say, some people say, you don't have a soul, you have an essence, and what you're doing is you're building your soul. I've heard you say you're building your spiritual mass, and then
Hmm.
now also you're building the tree of life. So um, all of these things that we're building, I wonder if you could talk on that a little bit. Is it different for you to be building spiritual mass than to be building tree of life, or is that the same thing?
Yes, quite different. So, uh, okay, the tree of life, or any tree, okay, I'm seeing a message that my internet is unstable. Is it okay on your end?
It seems fine. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Yeah, so there's a tree is a matrix, and a matrix is a system by which spirit can experience reality. So spirit is energy. It's fluctuating waveform energy, which has properties. There's mass or attraction or love, and then there's vibration or light. And these are the two properties. So in spiritual mass, you're generating love or magnetism or gravity,
Hmm.
which is a property of the space that the light flows through. And then you're also growing in vibrational or magnitude of light and vibration and range of vibration, both high and low. So a matrix is pathways that consciousness can embody itself within in order to interpret this light and this love as reality. Because in truth,
Hmm.
there's really only the energy, there's really only the spirit. But because of the tree of the human body, the nervous system, and the neurons of the mind, we're able to interpret all that spiritual vibration as ground that we stand on, as air that we breathe, as sun that shines on us, as water that we drink, so on and so forth. So the tree of life is a new matrix. It's a way
Hmm.
for us to finally and truly ascend and go beyond the limitations of the tree of knowledge or the nervous system, the matrix that everybody talks about, that is this world, is actually the nervous system of the human body. That's the
Yeah.
medium by which our consciousness is literally forced to experience this world. And
Yeah.
pluses and minuses there, right? Because were we not forced to experience this, we would not be able to do it. Our consciousness is not yet at a level to where we can thought form our own matrix that makes us capable of perceiving vibration as ground and sky and water. Like all of this majestic beauty is a gift to us that our body automatically gives us. Now, the minuses are that we are literally forced while we're in it to interpret this and nothing else. Well, this and spiritual offshoots of this, like what's commonly called the fourth dimension and so on. So the tree
Hmm.
of life is a gift of a new matrix, a spiritual matrix that first of all harmonizes the nervous system, the tree of knowledge matrix, and then creates pathways by which your consciousness can begin to experience beyond it, can one day grow and hold more soul mass, like enough soul mass to be ascended beyond this level of density, this level of energy, and also to experience a new series of spiritual realities. Because when we have out of body experiences, when we project our consciousness from within the nervous system, all of the spirit worlds that we experience are linked, they're related to this matrix. So by having the tree of life, you can finally begin to experience spiritual systems of reality that are truly outside of and beyond this. So that's the difference between the tree of life and growing into a new matrix versus
Hmm.
growing in spiritual mass, which is your love, your
Hmm.
magnetism, your attraction, and the strength of your
Yeah.
vibration.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So, um, the way that I'm hearing that is kind of like, um, the tree of life is sort of it's like the spiritual map that you've built for, and it's not just a map, it's like an actual network, where you can travel through to different infinities. Is that kind of accurate?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
and it's centralized within the body and externally. So you just described a webwork by which you can travel through, and that's part of it. But another big part is how it's a new system of self-discovery. So not just
Hmm.
external discovery, but a new way of experiencing a new spiritual form that yourself is centered within. So it's internal
Hmm.
and it's
Hmm.
external.
Yeah, so the tree of knowledge is also, adhering to the tree of life, and the tree of knowledge itself is changing to what is being grown in the tree of life.
Right, right. It has to be that way because our consciousness is firmly anchored in the nervous system, in the tree of knowledge. So, in order for us to
Hmm.
maintain consciousness as we even shift to the tree of life, a bridge has to be built. The two have to be made one. Otherwise, there's going to be a veil
Hmm.
in between the two, and that's
Yeah,
already what we experience. That's why we maintain no knowledge of the heavenly realms that we travel to because of this veil.
right.
So it's a bridge that's
Perfect.
being
Okay.
built between the two trees, between the two matrices.
Okay, cool. So actually, that opens up another question I didn't, write down, but I wanted to ask you is that veil in the Toltec, we call that veil the dreaming membrane. And so
Okay.
that membrane, we have to learn to cross through, and then on the other side is where the tree of life, as you call it, can be built, right? And
Yes.
and so, in the Toltec, we call that dreaming with a capital D. And so
Okay.
there's like nighttime dreaming is like with a lowercase d, but then, intentional, dreaming, where you're actually building something and you're building your will. And we talk about, you build, the warrior spirit builds you as you build it.
Hmm.
And so it's like a reflexive, like I am getting, it's like working out, it's like I am getting stronger as I'm building this thing. And so the question here is, do you relate to this idea that this is dreaming? Do you experience this as like, um, it's hard to point this question, but it's like uh, in my experience of dreaming, it is like I'm into a story almost. It's like, what do I want to happen in this story? And something unfolds, and maybe there's characters in there. Maybe I have memories. Maybe there's different kinds of human. But then, if I can overcome that human stuff, I'm passing through the dreaming membrane.
Hmm.
And then on the other side of that, it becomes like unimaginable universes that it can be
Yes.
explored. So I'm curious how you relate to all this stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So, uh, definitely, there is a veil, and well, first of all, I should state that I've had thousands of out of body experiences. I've been doing this
Hmm.
training for over 10 years, and 2 of those
Hmm.
years I devoted entirely to the out of body experience, to astral
Okay, cool.
travel, lucid
Hmm.
dreaming, projection. And during
Yeah.
that time, I
Hmm.
had like 5 to 10 every single night for like a couple
Hmm.
years.
Yeah.
And
Awesome. Yeah.
so I've pieced together a lot of data, and it really takes
Yeah.
hundreds of these to begin to assemble an accurate picture. You
Yeah.
can't just have a
Yes.
few. So
Can't
what
just
I've
try it. Yeah.
found out is that the veil is nothing more or less than the structural and vibrational variance between the self as it exists
Hmm.
within the nervous system of the human body, the tree of knowledge, the
Hmm.
matrix of the ego. These are
Hmm.
preset pathways. These are preset ranges of vibration that force our consciousness to interpret a certain way. And since birth, it's all that we know. So this is the self. So any memories that come outside of that, like when we go to sleep at night, the nervous system paralyzes, the mind shuts down, and the spirit leaves. Every single person goes out of their body every single night and freely travels all these other
Hmm.
realms. But the problem is that in these other realms, they're in a different embodiment, a different matrix that's so vastly different from the
Hmm.
circuitry, the self within the human body, that there's this veil, this membrane that
Hmm.
Toltecs and others experience as a physical thing that they must pass through. Like when you're
Hmm.
projecting your spirit, you can literally you can see it, you feel it, you pass
Yeah.
through it. Well, the
Yeah.
inside creates the outside. So what this veil is, this membrane is formed from the vibrational and structural variance between the body matrix and the spiritual matrix. So as
Hmm.
we do our energy exercises, as we do our meditations, as we go deep into theta, and as we expand consciousness from a focus when we're on our feet, as we raise and lower our vibration and begin to access spirit from within the body, this variance between those two states gets less and less and less. So the veil gets thinner, thinner, thinner.
Yeah.
You start receiving more data. Your dreams get more vivid. They get more lucid. They gain more depth, more meaning, more focus until that magical moment where you're able to penetrate and be lucid on the
Hmm.
other side of
Hmm.
this. And of course, the
Yeah.
ultimate goal here is to have no veil, but like to thin it to
Hmm.
the point where going to sleep each night is a conscious shifting from one state of perception to the next. No
Right.
falling asleep. That's what falling asleep is the law of attraction magnetizing you to your spirit, but passing you through this veil and like who what like just whoop. And as much
Right.
as we lose memory and black out as we pass out of the body and into spirit, the same thing happens when we pass back from spirit and into the body. Like I meet people in the out
Hmm.
of body realms and I'll be like, oh, that's great. Are you going to remember this? And they'll be like, no, I always fall asleep when I return to my body.
Uh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Um, yeah, this is great stuff. So in the Toltec way, there are ways to train. This is kind of opening up to the next question. I was going to ask questions regarding the double. Um, there are way.
Could we take a quick break? Would that be okay? And then we
Oh yeah, yeah, sure.
just
I'll
alter the
just pause the
recording?
recording.
Because yeah,
Yeah,
I gotta use the bathroom and I need a seat cushion. I messed up. Like my
cool.
back
Yeah, no
is
problem.
hurting. So
No
okay,
problem.
I'll be
Yeah.
right back.
Okay, cool. So, get back to this question I'm attempting to formulate.
Okay.
Some of this stuff is hard to put words to. So, in the Toltec perspective, one of the tricks that can be used in order to um, build your uh, dreaming body, to build the strength and bring your own consciousness into your body in the dream space, and to bring it through the dreaming membrane into that body, is to look for your hands um, in the dream. And so what I've discovered is um, the the instructions are look for your hands, and then people who become lucid in a dream have a really hard time, like, why can't I see my hands? And it's actually because um, by looking for your hands, we're actually using intent, which is another Toltec term. We're using intent to build our dreaming body. And so my first question is like, if you have anything you can add to that or relate to that. And then the second, um, that dreaming body we call the double. That's the someone's energy body. And so the double is also in Toltec knowledge, is also seen in the physical world. How are you here? Like, I just saw you over there. And I remember you telling a story of like someone seeing your double, like walking around, like going to get food from the refrigerator while you're in there doing energy work. And so I'm curious how you relate to the concept of the double, and then also like part of this in the Toltec is like, as we become more and more available to power, we are growing closer to the double. And at first, it's very far away energetically, and then it becomes closer and closer and closer. So, just
Yeah.
curious if you can illuminate how this works in your experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, the more I hear about this, the more I'm respecting this Toltec philosophy. So, yes, indeed, a body is a gift, and we were given this physical body by a creator. Everything in reality is thought formed. Everything is made from imagination at some level. So this is obviously a thought form that is beyond our current ability. We could not make this body from our thought by ourselves. But we've been spending a lot of time in this body, in its nervous system, for a very heightened reason, and that is to be able to recreate it, to be able to replicate it, because as spirit, we are pure consciousness. Our purest form of spirit is an orb of radiant spiritual energy, an orb of light. I'm sure everybody's heard the term orb, and this is how spirit naturally manifests itself. Well, over time, we've been subjecting this orb of light to different matrices, to different patterns. Like we've had lives as animals, we've had lives as plants, as trees. We're learning to thought form our spiritual body into more and more complicated structures that are more expressive, like obviously having hands and opposable thumbs and legs and mouths that we can speak through. This is the most expressive form, and it's all about self-expression. You got to remember, we're eternal beings on an eternal path of fulfillment through self-expression, through self-artistry. So the human body is like a miracle of self-expression. It's so far beyond any other bodies that we've ever had, but you must earn it. And so no, when you're out of your body, when you're no longer in this body, if you are just a regular human who has not done their energy exercises, their focus, their expansion of consciousness, if you have not anchored your consciousness within the molecular structure of your atoms and molecules instead of just the electrical system, then when you're not in the body, you don't really have one. You have like memory of a body. So when when I'm in these spiritual realms, I can see where people are at. And most people are like two-dimensional. They're like flat as a cardboard. They're missing their legs. Like they have no legs because it takes a lot of presence to like get your spirit, your consciousness down into your legs, and they're missing hands. You know, just like you said, we're in various stages of becoming human, and the greatest gift that we can take with us from this life, in fact, it's the only way we're ever going to get out of here because it's what we wanted from the soul level, and we will not allow ourselves to leave until we have it. And that's to be able to thought form, to be able to replicate the human body perfectly so that we have it for all eternity. So the more you do focus exercises, the more you generate energy within the body, spread your consciousness through your molecular structure and expand into the world around you, you begin to do what I call soul mapping. You begin to map the human body that is a gift that we experience automatically to where you have it consciously, so that when you are in spirit, you have a magnificent light body that's in a perfect human shape and glowing, with hands that function, feet that actually touch the ground, a mouth that can actually taste, a nose that can actually smell, because we also must map these sensory pathways too that enable us to interpret vibration as senses, because there's really only one sense, and that's touch. You know, that's feelings, and feelings get interpreted all these miraculous ways, and we get vision, we get hearing, and we get smell and taste. So these are all things that we must earn through presence mastery, through really being here, really being now, and focusing your presence within the body. So yeah, looking at your hands is a great clue, because it's not going to be, the same. And
Yeah.
that's a great way to help you realize I'm dreaming, like something's off, and to give you the bridge to build between the spirit and to pass through that veil, and to begin recording the data. Because unless your human self, your brain, the electrical system of the body, is able to record the data of the spiritual event, then it's as though it never happened. And so that's an out of body experience is actually a multi-dimensional experience, because part of you is in the brain, in the body, recording the data, and a part of you is in spirit, actually having the experience. So yeah, the other thing you said about your double, as you do these energy exercises, focus exercises, they're similar to Qigong, but there's two types of expansions of consciousness that can be had. One is I call meditation, which is diminishment. In meditation, you seek to ignore the data that's right in front of you. You ignore what you touch, you ignore what you see, you ignore what you hear, and you lower your brain waves, ignoring all the data of the matrix of the human body, until this magical moment where you can perceive your spirit, and then the next thing you know, you're out of your body. That's meditation. And then there's the opposite end of that spectrum, which I call focus. And in my energy mastery courses, I'm more about focus than meditation, although I teach both. With focus, you hyper observe. You observe what you're seeing, what you're hearing, what you're tasting, what you're feeling. You observe it to the occlusion of all else. You step out of the past. You step out of the future. You stop thinking. You devote all of your mental consciousness towards observing what's happening right here, right now. And when you're finally capable of observing all of it, you finally have enough consciousness left over to where you begin to observe beyond it. And the next thing you know, you're observing the physical body and the spirit body at the same time. And your vibration, your brain waves are raising up into gamma. So it's the opposite of meditation. Now, as you do these focus exercises, you build the bridge between the ego, the human self, and the spirit through raising the vibration, and you begin to soul map the spiritual presence. You begin to weave the physical body into the spiritual body, to where when you're not in the physical body, your spirit body accurately reflects the physical body. And then you practice grounding is another big part of the focus exercises that I teach, where you sink into the earth, you grow roots, you go into yourself, you come into matter, you come out of the ether into the air, out of the air into the water, out of the water into the solid matter. And then even deeper than that, you're seeking to manifest the
Mhm.
spirit into the material. And as you do that, your light body gets thicker, stronger, more magnetic, more solid, more real, more dense. And there's a magical moment where people start perceiving your light body, because
Mhm.
who you are in spirit is operating simultaneous to who you are now, because all of time is simultaneous like that, as we've
Mhm.
already discussed. So
Mhm.
yeah, after several years of these exercises, I started getting reports from people. Like, people would see me all over the world. Like, Michael, I saw you here. I swear it was you. I know it was you last night. And uh, my partner at the time, when I remember the story that you were mentioning, this was happened in 2012 when I was in Atlanta, Georgia. The son said, where'd you just come from, Michael? And I was like, I was just asleep in my bed. And he's like, no, you weren't. You were just in the kitchen grabbing a snack because I saw you. And I'm like, yeah, that's my spiritual presence. It's getting strong enough. It's getting real enough to where people
Mhm.
can perceive it. And I would say the peak of that happened when I left myself a voicemail. So I'm watching TV in the bedroom. This was in 2012, and the phone rings, and we had a traditional phone with an answering machine at the time. Answering machine picks up, and I hear a voice leaving a message, and I'm like, that sounds like me. And so we pause the movie, and I go to press play on the message, and it's me. It's my voice. And I'm wishing myself, I said, much love to you. I forget the exact words, but I wished myself a blessing of love, and then hung up. And I was like, what? Like, whoa. And so I look at the caller ID, and it's from my Google phone. Like, you know how your Gmail has a number associated
Yeah,
with it.
yeah.
So I'm like,
Mhm.
okay. So I go in, I log into my Google, and my home phone is not a contact. My home phone is not a contact in my Google system. So there's no way that it was an electronic glitch,
Uh-huh.
because my home phone wasn't even a contact. And that was
Mhm.
when I realized how much I had built my simultaneous spiritual presence, my spiritual
Yeah.
higher self. And it gave me a high level of confidence for interacting with my spiritual self. Like, you may also
Mhm.
know this about me, that I'm a healer. I think you did several healing sessions with me in the past, but
Yeah.
I'm a very
Yeah.
skilled spiritual healer, and I employ different methods with every person. And sometimes the method that I use is a type of faith healing, and that's faith in my higher self. It's faith in my
Yeah.
spiritual self. And I
Yeah.
remember after I had this voicemail left to me, as you can imagine, that gave me an incredible amount of faith in the legitimacy
Yeah.
of my simultaneous spiritual nature. So I,
Yeah.
I had a healing session. A guy reserved a distance healing with me over Skype. He had bleeding internal hemorrhoids with a nightmare, right? And he was about ready
Yeah.
to have surgery, which is a
Uh-huh.
nightmare. Can you imagine having a
Yeah.
knife
Yeah.
taken to that special place of the
Yeah.
body? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's an absolute nightmare. So he felt something when he saw one of my interviews, and he's like, I think this guy can heal me. So he reserved a
Yeah.
session. And the way I healed him was a faith healing, faith in my higher self. So I said, okay, I got you, brother. I want you to lay down, and I'm going to do the session. I'm going to hang up. I'm going to call you back in 15 minutes. So for
Hmm.
this one, I just reached out to my higher self, my spiritual being, and I said, get it done. And that was it. I said, get it done. And then I went and I surfed the internet for 15 minutes, and I just let my higher being get
Yeah,
it done.
for
Like, I
sure.
didn't
Yeah.
even want to make connections or get in the way, because
Yeah.
my
Mhm.
spirit has a level of perception that my ego doesn't, can see things
Mhm.
that I
Yeah.
never will be able to while I'm subjected to the
Right.
electricity of the body. And
Yeah.
so knowing that, the
Exactly.
wisest thing I could do in this instance was nothing, as much of nothing as
Yeah.
possible. So I surfed the internet for 15 minutes,
Yeah.
and I called homeboy back, and he was healed. He was
Yeah.
instantly healed. His hemorrhoids were gone, and well, he ended up studying all of my material, paying for all of my
Oh, wow.
courses, and
Yeah, awesome.
so yeah, that's an example, you know, that
Yeah.
of how far this can go. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I would call that healing him through the third attention, because in the Toltec, the first attention is like how we're talking now, like language and understanding. The second attention is like doing energy work on somebody, or the dreaming attention is what the second attention is called. And then the third attention is where it's like beyond, it's like God attention, right? It's like beyond what you can even understand. And most people
Yeah. Okay.
can't communicate with the third through the third attention, but if you allow yourself to communicate
Right.
through the third attention, like stuff can happen that is beyond our understanding, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's that. I would say that that would be the ultimate target. Then.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a very similar system that I teach. The first step is to be able to sense energy. The first step is to be able to sense
Mm-hmm.
beyond the spectrum that the nervous system of the body forces us into
Mm-hmm.
perceiving. And then the step beyond that
Mm-hmm.
is to no sensory data from any matrix system whatsoever, but from pure consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes through
Yeah, yeah,
practice. You got to learn
yeah,
to dissociate from lesser data and only adhere to the
yeah,
greater data that comes through with no filters. It
yeah,
takes repeat exposure
yeah.
again and again and again and again, and practice and devotion.
Yeah, exactly. So the way I would translate that is like taking your, like, first we learn the first attention, like the basics of being able to speak the language, which is what we're doing now, and then to be able to subtract our focus from the first attention and then put it into the second attention, and then building the second attention. I've heard you talking about building, maybe this is on a physical level, but like building the fibers in
Yes,
your being, right, in your body.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
So
develop the
I love
nerve
I love how
fibers
that
to where they
overlap.
can carry, just like the muscles in the body when we work out and get
Yeah.
strong, when you do focus
Yeah.
exercises, when you channel energy consciously, the nerve fibers grow and the sensory nerves
Right.
grow too, and they become more sensitive, more receptive. The motor nerves get bigger, and you're able to hold a greater spiritual charge within
Yeah.
the body, which allows you to begin to perform feats like moderate displays of telekinesis and healing
Yeah.
people. All of these
Yeah.
manifested abilities are initially acquired by enhancing the nervous system of the human body. But then, as you were
Yeah.
just saying, with the third attention, there's a magical point where you grow
Yeah.
beyond that and you start to
Yeah.
interact with God directly.
Right. And that's what I feel like you're really embodying now, which is like really what made this conversation exciting for me, because the third attention is also what's kind of consuming my focus as well.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now I want to get into one of my favorite topics, which is also something that you were interested in talking about, which is the assemblage point. And and just so you know, even in the Toltec world, there are various understandings of the assemblage point. And
Okay.
and I want to bring in another terminology also, which is really important in my little branch of Toltec stuff, which is called the gap. And so the gap is the hole in the energy field, which causes our energy to leak out over time and causes aging and ultimately causes us to die. And so the Toltecs put uh, focus into creating elasticity to closing down the gap, and so that the hole is minimal, and then also what's called rescuing the assemblage point from the gap, so that the assemblage of perception is intentional and it's not run by our survival mechanism, right? It's not um, automatic, but it becomes something that we get to influence, the assemblage point. So um,
Okay.
I think you read something about what I'd written to you about what the assemblage point is. I'll just recap it real quick. So the assemblage point is how our perception is assembled. And the way it's typically illustrated is It's about the size of a tennis ball, and it can move around inside of your energy field. And um, the ordinary person, it's usually stuck behind their right shoulder blade, and so this causes people to be fixated in ordinary consciousness. And so liberating the assemblage point makes it so that people can uh, choose how their perception is assembled. So
Mhm.
I don't expect it to be exactly the same for you, but I'm curious because there are so many limitations with this. I'm curious how that lands for you, or maybe what you could add to that
Sure.
paradigm.
Yeah, so I would interpret all of that to be, well, adhering to the law of one, that everything is connected and that all is one from the inside out. The assemblage point would be where the
Mhm.
self meets God, or where the finite meets the infinite, or where the spirit meets the physical. So where the perceptory mechanisms of the
Mhm.
human self, the ego consciousness in the brain, meet the perceptory
Mhm.
mechanisms of the infinite spirit. There's going to be a
Mhm.
magical meeting point between these two places of consciousness. And I've
Yeah.
found that the breath is miraculously centered, like right in the middle of that, which makes the breath probably the most powerful tool
Mhm.
for making that divine
Mhm.
connection. Is that the
Mhm.
breath is like right in the
Mhm.
focal point of that. So
Mhm. Mhm.
so yeah, these in spirit, everything mental has a location, right? So even though you would say, if you're talking in terms of consciousness, the place where physical consciousness meets spiritual consciousness, that's sort of like a mental location, but mental locations
Mhm.
have physical locations. So I've always experienced something like an assemblage point, but on the
Yeah.
video that you showed me, it seemed very uh, linear or directional, or like coming from.
Yeah.
I've always experienced it inside out, like self
Mhm.
is
Yeah.
deep inside, spirit is surrounding, and so
Yeah.
I've always experienced it somewhere in the column, like from root
Mhm.
all the way up to the top, and then
Mhm.
inside out, and I can feel it turning, shifting, changing alignments
Mhm.
and information, and then my job
Mhm.
has been to raise it. And my observation has actually been that most people is down low, somewhere between the solar plexus and the root, which is why
Mhm.
human consciousness thinks about three things pretty much. They think about sex, emotions, and the self as it relates to the world, like selfishness,
Mhm.
and that's normal. That's the
Mhm.
solar plexus chakra to the root chakra. That's what that's all about:
Yeah.
sex, food, emotions,
Yeah.
and the self as it relates to called self identity. And that's where
Yeah. Yeah.
all translations are stuck until you can finally raise that up to a very heart centered focus, and then that's the beginning of the journey when you finally settled your self identity issues. Like
Mhm.
you know who
Mhm.
you are, you know what you are, and you need
Yeah.
no external confirmation or validation, and so you no longer seek it. You're no longer identifying the self, so that enables you to begin to have a real relationship with spirit, and then that begins at the heart, progresses through the throat, goes up to the crown, and then as that happens, the nature of the lower areas changes. Like they
Yeah.
get exposed to divinity, and these
Yeah.
once lower natures get replaced by divine nature. And so
Yeah. It's
that's
purified.
been, yeah, yeah, that's
Mhm.
the tree of the human body initially starts out with emotion is energy in motion, right? So
Yeah.
we start out thinking about sex and bliss and love and sadness and sorrow. We have our human range of emotions, and then we have the self
Mhm.
identity. And the goal of rising through the human tree is to get to what everybody, all spiritual people, knows as the heart opening, the heart burst, and this is
Mhm.
like the goal, but it's actually just the start. The heart
Uh-huh.
opening becomes the ground that the new
Right.
being stands on, and so that
Yeah.
that feeling of the heart opening becomes your new norm. That becomes your new,
Yeah.
the new ground of emotional existence that you hold
Yeah.
within yourself. And this comes through
Yeah.
proper focus, proper understanding of energy, and holding the self in alignment, which is what we talk about
Yeah.
in the metaphysical church meetings. Is the first meeting is all about alignment, and that's so that you
Yeah.
can rise beyond that human tree and into the tree of which the heart is the roots. And then you start to get exposed to heavenly emotions and heavenly feelings that goes beyond anything that a body can even interpret. I call it the nexus. It's like a constellation of stars that are inside and outside of the body, each one a pinpoint focal point of divine emotions that are constantly radiating 360 degrees, and you're
Hmm.
feeling all of them simultaneously. So you rise through
Hmm.
the human tree into the goal, which is to be rooted in the tree of life, which is the heart opening, and then your whole emotional structure changes, and the whole nature of
Yeah.
spirit that you're into changes, and that's from a permanent shift in alignment.
Yeah. So you're building the ground which the tree of life can grow on.
Yes, exactly. The soil. You have to be the fertile soil yourself, and you
Yeah.
have to provide what I call the living water, which means your
Yeah.
consciousness has to actually be focused within the water of the body, which is a bigger feat than most people realize. We start out in
Hmm.
our incarnational patterns as ether, and ether is lighter than air. Ether is less substantial than air, just like water is more solid, more tangible than air. Well, ether is even less
Yeah.
tangible than air.
Yeah.
So our goal is to come into air, and then to come from the air into the water, then from the water
Mm.
into the solid
Hmm.
matter, and then that lets the tree grow up being nourished by
Yeah.
spirit, because the elements by themselves are dead. They're just patterns, right? But once
Hmm.
spirit, once
Hmm.
consciousness is in the element, it becomes living water. You find what I call the presence of God, the presence of the Holy Spirit in the matter, in the water, in the air, and then the breath of life becomes immensely more magical. And this is the
Yeah.
nourishment that the tree of life needs to take root and to grow within your being.
Yeah. Okay. So this also explains why you started with aerokinesis before you got to the water.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. And actually, how I found you is I discovered my own aerokinesis abilities, and I was like, "What the heck is going on here?" And so I ended up a friend sent me your stuff on YouTube when I was talking to him, and that's how we actually connected.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah, cool. So I would love if you could share about your work and the church that's just started. And I attended the first meeting, as you know, it was awesome, and just really loving what you're doing. If you'd like to share about what is unfolding and how people can engage with you if they want to.
Absolutely. And thank you, brother. I appreciate that. I'm really glad that you enjoy my new work. It means a lot to me. So I
Yeah,
took a 4 year break from public presence entirely. It was after that spiritual warfare that I went through that was extremely traumatic. And so I
yeah,
needed a break. I needed to integrate everything that I went through. Not only that, I was being exposed to miraculous new knowledge that almost made my old knowledge seem obsolete, although I was to find out that it actually fits in very nice. So I
yeah,
took a four
yeah,
year hiatus where I was not publicly available for anybody. All my websites got taken down. My presence was removed from the internet to the point where you wouldn't even know that I existed unless you heard about me through the grapevine. So I'm back
yeah,
now, and so I used to teach exclusively through Avatar Energy Mastery Institute, which is a system of energetic progression through these understandings, very practical exercises that you can do to open your clairvoyance, to expose yourself to your energetic body, to learn telekinesis and other demonstratable abilities that can prove to people that the existence of spirit is real. And so I have republished the Avatar Energy Mastery Institute, and I have also released my new work, which I call the Metaphysical Church of the Tree of Life. And the two go hand in hand. The Metaphysical Church of the Tree of Life is all about using energy mastery, using one's own expansion of consciousness to have a massively enhanced relationship with God. So in typical churches in our world that mostly have a negative interpretation to us spiritual people for good reason, people have a quasi or a pseudo relationship with God because they're physically based beings. They're in the nervous system. They're not clairvoyant. They're not able to see spirit. They're not able to feel spirit. They're able to pray. They offer prayers, and sometimes they feel feelings where the biochemistry, where spirit touch is strong enough to cause a biochemical reaction. So they can feel tingles or goosebumps, and this is the wholeness of their relationship with God, and they feel that they have this relationship with God, and well, God bless them, but they don't, not really. Like in order to truly know God, you have to know yourself, and self is spirit, self is energy. Like one of the things that the Bible says is you have to be born again of spirit. Well, dunking yourself underwater while saying a few magical words does not achieve that. However, doing your meditations, doing your energy, doing your focus exercises does cause a rebirth of spirit. You gain a true and permanent access to your magnetic vibrational light being. And once that happens, you finally are qualified. This is like a pre-qualification to truly give yourself into a relationship with God, with the highest creator. The God that I describe is a consciousness that surrounds the omniverse, looking back in, holds it together like a mother holding an egg, and peering within with infinite consciousness. It's like the ultimate higher self. I don't worship or bend my knee or bow to any aspects within that. The whole idea is that you yourself are one of these holy aspects within
Yeah.
it, and to find God within your being, and then to relate, to claim the part of God that was gifted to you, and then to relate with God the infinite through that capability, through the heart of God, or what I call the
Hmm.
heart of Christ, which
Hmm.
dwells internally
Hmm.
within each of us. So my new teachings are two-part. It's you doing the energy mastery and the focus exercises to the point where you become a spiritual being. And many of you listening might already fully be one with your spiritual presence. You might already be traveling out of the body. You might already be vibrationally aware of your spiritual self at all times, in which case you have your prerequisites under order. For those of you who aren't, it's a very quick path there if you do choose to study with me. So Avatar Energy Mastery has been republished again, and that's at avatarenergymastery.com. And the Metaphysical Church of the Tree of Life is my other website, and that's at mctol.org. And the Metaphysical Church is a two-part process. There's the affirmation and alignment meeting, which is what you attended. And it's a once per week live stream, and we alternate between affirmation and alignment, which is open to people who are non-members. And then there's the advanced learning group that we do the following weekend. So each weekend we alternate between affirmation and alignment and advanced learning group, where we actually activate these higher consciousness within ourselves, and where I delineate the intellectual data, the higher learning associated with the tree of life. So
Hmm.
the affirmation and alignment meetings are open up to non-members. To become a member, it's donation based, so it's just a gift from your heart, anything that you choose that you can comfortably afford, a balance between what you think the material is worth and your current financial situation. Any gift amount is accepted to be a member.
Hmm.
But the affirmation and alignment meeting has that twofold purpose, where if you're already a member, it's where we meet up every other week to work on our alignment, which is foundationally critical. All of the higher learning that we're studying in the advanced learning group is next to worthless if you don't have your proper alignment. So we attend
Hmm.
this meeting, and alignment is more than just the assemblage point, right? It's also your mentality. It's also your
Hmm.
beliefs, reprogramming your beliefs to go from a third
Hmm.
dimensional understanding of reality to a fifth dimensional understanding of reality, and also reprogramming your beliefs from being self-servant, fulfilling your desires, working on letting your ego run the show to where you have all these goals and plans and they're all a fulfillment of your desires. Well, it's a reprogramming of your ego consciousness to being in service, to choosing to love God with all your heart, mind, and soul in the moment, so that that highest will of our own self embodies us within the moment, and we can finally begin for the first time to actually serve the self. So it's a catch 22, but the only way to truly serve yourself is to selflessly serve God, because God is your highest self. So yeah, if you are a self-servant person trying to fulfill all these desires, it may seem like you're serving yourself, but you're doing a piss poor job. It's really
It's not
not
going to
the
work.
ultimate. Right. Yeah, exactly. It's a catch 22. So these affirmation and alignment meetings, they're perfect for new people to attend, because we state all the core beliefs of the metaphysical church, what it is that we believe in, what is God from a fifth dimensional standpoint, what is energy, what is consciousness, how do we fit into this world. I've heard that it's all one, but how do we experience that? We go over that every time. So it's a very beautiful setup to where for new people that are new to the church, they get to hear perfectly from A to Z all of our beliefs and what we're all about. And for those that are already members, they don't have to feel like they're wasting their time hearing the same thing again and again, because we're working on alignment energetically and mentally that will give them a massively enhanced experience of everything they learn in the advanced learning group. So if you're listening to this and there's one website that you can remember, I recommend going to my bio site, which is a funnel that explains who I am as a person, as a spiritual teacher, and leads to both of my works, both the Avatar and the Metaphysical Church. And that's Michael Monk, MONK, MICHAELMONK, michaelmonk.bio, bio. That's my bio site, and that will lead you to everywhere else.
Awesome, yeah, and I highly recommend it. I am just really glad that Michael came back into the public eye, and so in support of that, I am also one of the founding members of making sure that I'm putting my money where my mouth is, and
Thank
just
you, brother.
wanting more, yeah, just wanting more of this to be in the public. And so I'm really grateful for everything that you're contributing. I know that like to say that you have put in effort for this is like the understatement of a century. So
Yeah,
I know you have been through the ringer like countless times, and so I'm really grateful for all that you're doing for everybody. And if you know me personally, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to chat about my experience with Michael, and if you have any questions or if you want to just contact him through me, that works too. And yeah, anything else you want to finish off with before we wrap up here?
well, just that this has been great. I'm very happy to see how much my beliefs actually, or my knowledge actually aligns with the Toltec, and how
Yeah,
we now have this wonderful system between you and I of interacting, like we share terminology now. And I want to
yeah,
say that I really appreciate your support of my return to teaching. It's a bit of a vulnerable place for the
for
moment. I'm a
sure.
very strong guy, but even strong guys can be vulnerable sometimes. And so thank you for stepping up and choosing to be a supporting member. And I'm very respectful of that and glad that you find value enough to host me on your show and to recommend me to other people. That says a lot. Namaste and God
Yeah,
bless you.
yeah. Yeah, likewise. Thank you. I've always felt a really strong connection with you. Not just spirit to spirit, but man to man. I feel like we have a really meaningful brotherhood. I feel like that is worth supporting in itself.
Well, you're going to have to come back out to Bali in the near future.
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah, that's actually something that I'm hoping for as well.
Yeah, I'm in Bali right now, for those of you who aren't already aware of that. Incredible place. I recommend it to everybody.
Yeah, me
Happiest
too.
days of
It's
my
a
life.
incredible energy there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Michael, and
Thank you, Josh.
for being on the show, and looking forward to speaking again soon.
All right, namaste. God bless you and family. Much love.
Much love.